In the small Midwest town of Flora, Indiana, the morning of June 16, 2021 began with a 911 call, placed from the residence of Joshua and Sarah Barnes. The Barnes informed police that they awoke to find an unresponsive, severely injured black male with a traumatic physical injury to his face on the couch in their living room. The injured male was identified as 55-year-old Willie Smith of Lafayette, Indiana. Willie would succumb to his injuries 2 days later in the hospital. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. And while evidence left at the crime scene provided some clues about what happened to Willie, and even the identity of 3 likely suspects, it was not immediately clear what Willie was doing 25 miles away from home in Flora, and how exactly he ended up beaten and unconscious on the Barnes' living room couch. Conflicting witness statements and suspects turning on each other made the truth a bit more elusive here, leading to holes in the state's theory and questions as to whether they've actually identified everybody who was involved that night. Despite what initially appears to be a harebrained robbery scheme gone wrong, this event did not occur in a vacuum. Further research and investigation into the lives of the accused reveals a complex and cyclical culture of criminality, abuse, and generational trauma that, when unchecked by consequences, will always harm and endanger innocent lives caught in the crossfire. If you've followed my channel for any amount of time, then the setting of this case may be familiar to you, because it is the unfortunate backdrop of a case that is very near and dear to my heart, a mysterious, intentionally set house fire that tragically took the lives of 4 sisters, ages 5 to 11, Kiana, Kiara, Cariel, and Kione. And it wasn't until 3 months after the blaze that the news broke that this wasn't an accident, it was a quadruple murder.
And now today, to learn that fire investigators believe someone intentionally set this fire has just added to the devastation.
2 weeks after that, however, on February 13th, 2017, 2 teen girls would go missing out of Delphi, Indiana, just a town over from Flora. Abigail Williams and Liberty German were found stabbed to death, their bodies displayed in a sick tableau indicative of a ritualistic sacrifice. But despite these 2 tragic events occurring just 9 miles and 85 days apart, and even factoring in the statistical anomaly that 6 female children would die by homicide in a 3-month time period in a county with a population of just 20,000, law enforcement chose not to investigate the cases together, which resulted in a lot more media attention and resources devoted to the Delphi girls. The disparities in case interest is perhaps best quantified by the rewards for information. The Delphi case sits at a cool $325,000, while the reward for Flora is just at $5,000. The murders of Abby and Libby eclipsed the Flora fire in the public consciousness, and as a result, law enforcement received a lot less pressure to solve the case, and it remains unsolved and arguably a cold case today. As the years went by, the big yellow house on the corner of East Columbia and Division Street stood as a reminder of 4 stolen lives that were never answered for. The town of Flora, Indiana is just over a square mile and is home to some 2,100 people. Approximately 93% of its residents are white, and Carroll County itself has a potent and pervasive history of racial hate. I believe it's important to keep these data points and possible cultural biases in mind as we look at the murder of Willie Smith. But without further ado, let me introduce you to those involved and allegedly involved in his murder. In June of 2021, 24-year-old Cheyenne Brooks Brown was living at the home of a 42-year-old woman named Jennifer Barnes Dean. While not much is known about 24-year-old Cheyenne's upbringing, court records reveal that she did have 4 children that she had difficulty keeping custody of, and a criminal trespassing charge from 2018. She grew up in Delphi and attended Delphi Community High School until the 11th grade. She would later testify to having a learning disability that caused her to cognitively perform at a 4th grade level. Cheyenne had known Jennifer Dean since she was 3 years old, and although not biologically related, she did refer to her as Mom. Dean's criminal history consists of over a dozen misdemeanor convictions for check deception, conversion, and driving-related offenses, several felony convictions for theft, forgery, and counterfeiting, domestic violence, and several probation revocations. It was later found by the court that Jennifer had a history of manipulating Cheyenne into committing prostitution and robbery. Cheyenne had previously lived with Jennifer, and at one point, Jennifer had coordinated or assisted in Cheyenne's participation in prostitution on a weekly basis over a 2-year period. Jennifer kept all the money Cheyenne made from the prostitution, and on several occasions, the plan would change from sex to just taking the money. Jennifer had been married to a man named Corey Dean since June of 2018, but they would later divorce just 2 weeks after the murder of Willie Smith on June 30th of 2021. Just a couple months after divorcing Jennifer, Corey would actually go on to marry Jennifer's biological daughter, Taya. This marriage was very short-lived, however. In October of 2021, Taya showed up to a hospital with domestic battery injuries that she says were caused by Corey Dean. Corey was arrested for possession of meth, strangulation, and domestic battery as a result. But he pretty much got off scot-free with a suspended sentence and probation, despite having an extremely long rap sheet, mostly for drug and domestic battery charges. He would reoffend while on probation, arrested on burglary and domestic battery charges, and ultimately pleading guilty to strangulation in exchange for a 3-year prison sentence. But Taya was far from the perfect mother that she portrayed herself to be on social media. As is often the case, beyond the facade of family photo shoots and matching outfits, a darker dynamic would reveal itself when in December of 2022, Taya was charged with domestic battery with serious bodily injury against 2 of her young kids. Photographs of this horrific abuse were uploaded to Facebook in a post that reads, "I'm sharing this because it needs to be seen. You never truly know somebody. I watched this girl grow up. I know her family. She is from Flora, born and raised, and did terrible things to her baby. Make her famous. If you see something, say something. No child deserves this pain." And attached are photos, which I'm not going to share here, but they depict what looked to be a young male child with lacerations, possibly from an electrical cord, all over his torso and his face. It's just absolutely horrific to look at. She accepted a plea deal and will be spending the next 6 years of her life in the Indiana Department of Corrections. I want to make it clear that although they're both in custody for unrelated crimes of violence, neither Taya or Corey were ever charged in the murder of Willie Smith. But I thought it was important to share this information to contextualize this murder within the environment of normalized violence, dysfunction, and criminality. With that being said, there's one more accomplice we need to discuss, and that's 22-year-old Tyrone Lethbridge. Tyrone and Cheyenne were dating at the time, and the young couple had been staying at Jennifer Dean's home for the last couple weeks. It's unknown exactly how Tyrone met Cheyenne, but in my opinion, he appears to be a bit of an outsider, sort of displaced into this dysfunction by way of his relationship with Cheyenne. He's from Lafayette and was the star of his high school football team and was known as a good kid. At 22 years old, his only prior offense is a single traffic violation, and he has 1 child of his own. Whether it was fate or bad luck or any other combination of circumstances that brought this trio together to the house on the corner of Division Street and East Clem, what's not in debate is that a series of decisions left 1 man dead, 3 locked up for the foreseeable future, and several children thrown into the custody of Child Protective Services.
Willie Smith kept his dialysis appointment in Lafayette last Tuesday, then headed a half-hour away to Flora in Carroll County.
Police say they used a dating app to lure Smith to Flora for an $80 sexual encounter.
He stopped at an ATM machine in Lafayette, took out $120, went to Flora to meet this young lady, and she wasn't there. Instead, there was a young man there.
Now, when Brooks Brown and Smith met, Lethbridge attacked Smith with a baseball bat and robbed him. Police say that Smith was found unresponsive in a Flora couple's home. No word on how he got there.
911, what's your emergency?
Lacey Cruey says her neighbor found Smith and called for help.
She told her husband, and I guess he thought it was an intruder at first, but when they opened the door, the guy was all bloody, so they brought him in the house and set him on the couch and called 911.
This account from the neighbor that they brought him into the house is inconsistent with the police report that they found him already on the couch, which suggests that he was an intruder. In a nearby alley, police found Smith's car with the car keys in the driver's door lock. Smith's car was parked next to a garage. Police observed a blood smear on the side of the garage and a pool of blood on the ground between the garage and Smith's car. Inside Smith's car, police found an ATM receipt from a bank in Lafayette for $120 that was dated for 1:05 that morning. They did not find his phone, wallet, bank card, or the cash in question. These circumstances strongly indicated to investigators that Smith was robbed and assaulted near his vehicle at that location. Moreover, Smith sustained multiple fractures to his skull, indicating there were multiple blows to his head and multiple impacts, which meant that his injuries were not due to an accident. In search of more information, the police speak with Jennifer Dean at her home at 320 Division Street. She denied hearing or seeing anything unusual earlier that day. They asked if Dean recognized a picture of Willie Smith, and she replied that she did not. After the police leave, Jennifer tells Cheyenne and Tyrone to leave her residence. The couple, along with Cheyenne's young daughter, gather their things to leave Jennifer's house. Meanwhile, officers discovered security video showing an individual walking in front of the cameras near Jennifer's house that morning. The individual was a black male wearing a bright orange shirt and carrying a duffel bag at approximately 9 a.m. While looking for the man and the bag in question, officers located Cheyenne and Tyrone loading up the car. They intercepted the vehicle leaving the house and asked Tyrone Lethbridge if he would come down to the police department for questioning. According to the probable cause affidavit, he agreed, saying he wanted to talk with them and get the situation straightened out. Once at the police department, investigator Steve Mullen showed Lethbridge a picture of Smith taken that morning just prior to being transported to the hospital. Investigator Mullen explained to Lethbridge that he was not in custody and could leave at any time. He again agreed to talk with investigators. At first, Tyrone Lethbridge denied any knowledge of the incident, but then admitted to knowing what happened. He stated the plan was to lure Smith to the location. When Smith arrived, Lethbridge was nearby hiding behind a garage. He heard Corey Dean attack Smith from behind and put him on the ground. Tyrone then stated he wanted to leave the police department and did so. But moments after Tyrone left, Chief Redmond and Officer Thomas advised that Cheyenne stated Tyrone had told her not to talk to police because he had done something bad that morning. At this point, Tyrone Lethbridge was detained. The next day, Jennifer Dean contacted police to let them know that she had found a black wallet in her living room on a cabinet hutch. She stated she did not know who owned the wallet. Police came, photographed the wallet, and scheduled an interview with Dean. Dean then told police that on the night of the 15th, early morning of the 16th, that she was at home. She said that Cheyenne Brown and Tyrone Lethbridge had been staying there. She also said that she woke up early in the morning because of a slamming door. She said she saw Cheyenne and Tyrone in the home and said that her 16-inch baseball bat was missing. Dean would later call Officer Redmond to report that she had found the bat. When Officer Redmond arrived at Dean's house, she pointed out the bat at the bottom of the basement stairs. On June 18th, Willie Smith would pass away from his injuries in the hospital. Tyrone's charges of robbery resulting in serious bodily injury and aggravated assault were upgraded to include felony murder. While he was in jail, Tyrone spoke on the phone and exchanged text messages with the mother of his daughter. During these conversations, Tyrone stated the following: "Jen planned it, Shy hid him, and I hid the wallet, that the truth. She and Jen set it up on her Meet Me. Jen picked the location. Jen said I have to hide the wallet. Shy washed the bat and I put it in the back of the laundry room. I felt so bad I went back to make sure he was alive and he was snoring. I'm going to be honest, yeah, I did rob him because I was there, but female hit bro with the bat. I was tell he speak, but he died. My only proof is that bat fingerprint. I'm pretty sure the truth will come out and they will only get me for robbery. Cheyenne and me was the only people there. Her mom was in the house watching the kid and Shy gave Jen $20 to watch the kids." Tyrone also texted Willie's family, "I just want the truth to come out." He also admitted his role as an accomplice to robbery, but did not admit to swinging the bat that caused the deadly injuries.
Smith's family learned the details of his death when they say Lethbridge called them from jail last Friday.
We were very surprised, but we also know that he's very young and he's scared. He didn't know that my father died. He thought that he was just beat up really bad.
On June 22nd, Cheyenne was charged with murder 2, which is felony murder, and robbery resulting in serious bodily harm. A month after the killing, on July 14th, 2021, the state charged Dean with 2 counts, felony murder and conspiracy to commit robbery resulting in serious bodily injury. Both Dean and Cheyenne pled not guilty on all counts. While Dean and Cheyenne were in jail, investigators learned that Dean encouraged Cheyenne to change her story so that Dean could get out. Dean also wrote letters to Cheyenne, one of which said, "You asked me to watch your daughter so y'all could go meet someone down the road, finesse someone. That don't mean to hurt anyone." Jennifer Dean's jury trial was held in April 2022. During the jury trial, Tyrone and Cheyenne both testified. Tyrone testified that the plan was only for Cheyenne to exchange sex for money, but this conflicted with his earlier statements made through text messages and several jail phone call recordings that described a plan for robbery. Cheyenne had trouble understanding the questions and recalling certain events. She testified that Dean helped plan the events on the night of June 15th, but like Tyrone, she gave conflicting responses whether the original plan was for robbery or prostitution. As to who actually struck Willie with the bat, Cheyenne and Tyrone pointed fingers at each other. It was discovered throughout the course of the trial that the conspiracy began when Tyrone, Cheyenne, Dean, or some combination proposed a plan to use Cheyenne's phone on the Meet Me dating app to lure an individual with the prospect of exchanging $120 for sex with Cheyenne. There was conflicting evidence regarding whether the original plan was for Cheyenne to engage in prostitution or for Tyrone and Cheyenne to rob the individual. Dean initially suggested a trailer park as a location for the meeting, but the conspirators later decided that the meeting would instead occur in a nearby alley. The court also found that Dean provided Tyrone with a bandana and either Cheyenne or Tyrone with a small baseball bat, which Dean kept in her home for protection. Dean would receive $20 for watching Cheyenne's daughter while Tyrone and Cheyenne met the individual. Willie Smith Jr. responded to the Meet Me solicitation and met with Cheyenne in the alley sometime between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. on June 16th. Tyrone hid behind a nearby detached garage. Cheyenne did not have sex with Willie, and at some point, Willie exited the vehicle and pulled out a pocket knife. The court found that either Cheyenne or Tyrone struck Willie on the head with the bat. Willie fell to the ground where he was struck several more times. Cheyenne and Tyrone returned to Dean's house with the bat along with $120 and Willie's cell phone and wallet. Cheyenne told Dean to contact the police because a man was hurt. However, Dean refused. Dean instructed Tyrone to get rid of the evidence and to clean the bat. Cheyenne cleaned the bat and Tyrone smashed Willie's phone and hid the wallet. No fingerprints or any other meaningful DNA evidence were found on the bat. Under Indiana law, to prove a conspiracy, the state must present sufficient evidence that the defendant intended to commit the underlying offense, which in this case is robbery, that there was an agreement with others to commit the offense, and that one of them performed an overt act in furtherance of the agreement. The state is not required to prove the existence of a formal express agreement and may prove the agreement by either direct or circumstantial evidence. Moreover, there is no distinction between the responsibility of a principal and accomplice. An accomplice commits the actual offense when a person knowingly or intentionally aids, induces, or causes another person to commit an offense. Also, an accomplice can be held criminally liable for everything done by his confederates, which was a probable and natural consequence of their common plan. A jury may infer complicity and participation in a crime from defendant's failure to oppose the crime, companionship with one engaged therein, and a course of conduct before, during, and after the offense which tends to show complicity. It is not necessary that the evidence show the accomplice personally participated in the commission of each element of the offenses. Rather, the accessory liability statute imposes a form of vicarious liability. Therefore, evidence that the accomplice acted in concert with those who physically committed the elements of the crime is sufficient to support a conviction for murder on the accessory theory. The jury found Jennifer Dean guilty on both counts, and a sentencing hearing was held on August 3, 2022. The trial court found Dean's criminal history to be an aggravating factor, found no mitigators, and sentenced Jennifer Dean to 60 years in the Department of Corrections. A court of appeals recently upheld her conviction and sentencing, finding that Dean was a participant in the robbery, which is the predicate offense to felony murder. The court found that where Cheyenne and Tyrone were unarmed, Dean provided them with the bat and a bandana. It was reasonably foreseeable that the bat could be used in a violent manner. In addition to helping plan the robbery and providing the murder weapon, Dean also helped cover up the evidence, lied to police, and encouraged Cheyenne to lie as well. The court found that Dean has a history of manipulating Cheyenne into committing prostitution and robbery, and this offense appears to be a continuation of that exploitative conduct. As such, the court found that Dean's sentence is appropriate in light of the nature of the offense. On October 13, 2022, Tyrone accepted a plea agreement, pleading guilty to felony murder and accepting a sentence of 45 years. Cheyenne maintains her not guilty plea, and her jury trial is scheduled for April 8th of 2024.
Nice guy. Like, he's not confrontational. He's a comedian. You know, he was really into comic books. He really enjoyed having a granddaughter. He was very proud of me and my sister. I'm just really surprised that someone would do this to him. When someone has a family, they should not have to die alone. And he died alone. And that really, he just didn't deserve this.
As with any homicide case, the ultimate victim is the one who lost his life. And his daughter was right, he didn't deserve this. And I have not mentioned this yet, but at the time of his death, Willie Smith was terminally ill with stage 5 kidney disease. In fact, his decision to meet up with his murderers on that fateful night was right after a dialysis appointment. There's something that's just profoundly sad to me about that. On one side, you have a man suffering from an illness that will probably kill him soon. And after a long day of receiving dialysis, perhaps out of desperation for human contact or just in search of a casual encounter, he reaches out to a sex worker who lures him 30 minutes from home under false pretenses, only to be attacked, robbed, and left to die on the street. I think this story also serves as a sobering indictment on the way that social media has really changed the way we interact with potential sexual partners. These interactions are often impersonal, transactional, and potentially dangerous for both men and women. It's important for users of these apps to keep their guard up and understand that some people do use these apps as hunting grounds for vulnerable victims. It's clear that rather than engaging in prostitution, Cheyenne was being trafficked by Jennifer. Where sex work is defined as consenting adult parties agreeing to an exchange of sexual services for money, sex trafficking is defined as use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel another person to engage in a commercial sex act. As mentioned, the court found that Jennifer did manipulate Cheyenne into committing prostitution as well as robbery. She assisted and coordinated these meetups and also kept all the money. She was pimping her out. I find it sad that Cheyenne viewed Jennifer as a mother figure to the point where she even called her mom. However, Jennifer did not refer to Cheyenne as her daughter in the same way. If I were Cheyenne's defense attorneys, I would emphasize the exploitative dynamic of this relationship, as well as her purported learning disability and Jennifer's criminal history, which does include domestic violence, in an attempt to portray Cheyenne as a victim of trafficking against her will, which could result in reasonable doubt or a shortened sentence if found guilty.
Tyrone Leftridge has been charged with the robbery and aggravated battery.
The second person has been charged in connection to a robbery and deadly beating of a Lafayette man in Flora.
Diane Brooks Brown faced charges of robbery and murder.
Leftridge, who just made his first court appearance, told police he did rob Smith, but claimed another man beat him. Leftridge also called Smith's family to deny the attack.
What I find interesting about the media coverage in this case is there only seems to be coverage around the time that all this went down in June of 2021. In fact, Cheyenne and Tyrone are the only suspects who received any media coverage at all. Not a single article was ever written about Jennifer Dean in connection with this crime. Not her arrest, not her trial, not her sentencing. And considering that this is the only other murder case in Carroll County, to the best of my knowledge, besides the Delphi double homicide and the Flora fire, you'd think they'd at least cover a jury trial or sentencing even, considering a lot of these outlets had previously reported on the arrest of 2 other individuals. Pretty much all the information I've presented throughout this video has been compiled from court records and social media. There is no reporting on Jennifer's case specifically. The media also declined to report on Tyrone's plea agreement that happened on October 13th of 2022. Which some of you may notice is a very significant date in the Delphi double homicide case, as it marks the first day that Richard Allen was ever considered a suspect and brought in for questioning, which turned into a search warrant being issued at his home. This search warrant application, Allen's attorneys allege, is improper, as the affiant, Sheriff Tony Liggett, failed to advise the judge of material facts and made false and misleading representations with reckless disregard for the truth. Without these false and misleading representations and omissions, the search warrant would not have been issued, according to Allen's attorneys. So that was some pretty major movement on October 13th of 2022 in 2 out of the 3 homicide cases in Carroll County. Tyrone Leftridge accepting a plea deal for felony murder, and the beginning of a very elaborate cover-up in an attempt to frame Richard Allen for the Delphi double homicide. But that's a whole other can of worms. As for why the local media and the powers that be kept Jennifer's name out of the headlines when it comes to this case, I think I have a pretty good idea.
Jennifer and Corey Dean also came up in the Flora investigation when Jennifer Barnes was interviewed December 2nd, 2016. Jennifer Barnes and Galen Rose had previously shared an ex-boyfriend. According to Jennifer, Colton and Jennifer had previously dated, and the pair had broken up when the two found out that they were in fact related. Jennifer told Flora investigators that she and Corey had stopped by Galen's on Sunday, November 20th, 2016, around 8:30 or 9 p.m. and left about an hour or two later. Corey and Jennifer would both be interviewed by law enforcement in 2016 and 2017.